Welcome to OTR Debate, our off-the-record podcast where three lawyers debate all things while managing to find out how it all comes back to the law. I'm Lando. I'm a prosecutor. I'll be the judge of this episode, and I'm here with my two debaters. We have a man that loves all things anime and manga and other things, right?
Yeah, I love other things too.
Mucci.
Hi, I'm Mucci. I work in immigration.
And we've got another debater that loves all things Disney. We aren't going to be discussing Disney, but we have we.
Hi, I'm Wee. I work in legislation, and I am not a Disney adult.
That's true. He isn't.
This week's episode, we're talking about Evangelion versus
Kaiju
something number 8.
Kaiju number 8.
So we've got a Stephen King novel, Cujo, and Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, that's what we're debating. See how those two intersect.
Mucci, what side are you taking?
I have Kaiju number 8.
Okay. As opposed to 7 through number 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you might hear why.
Oh.
Why he's number 8.
Okay. All right, what's that? I mean, you're taking the other side, right?
Yeah, I will be defending Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Okay. As always, the format of this episode and trial, as we get started here, is opening statements by our debaters, followed by questions by me, the judge. We'll take a little break or two, and then we'll get into closing arguments. So, opening statements. Who's starting?
I'll be starting.
Okay. Go ahead, counsel.
If you haven't heard of Neon Genesis Evangelion, it's a Japanese mecha anime series that originally aired in 1995 through 1996. And it's basically about a teenage boy who's recruited by a paramilitary organization to pilot a giant cyborg kind of machine and fight these monstrous beings that are called angels. And it takes place in a futuristic Tokyo. It takes place 15 years after a global catastrophe that was called the Second Impact. And human population was halved, basically. So almost half of people were killed. And then also it completely destroyed Antarctica.
Was it Thanos?
You could maybe make an argument in a different episode that Thanos is an angel.
Oh, okay. I'll move it to a different episode then.
So yeah, this teenage boy, he's kind of the main character, but the show also focuses on some other EVA pilots that are part of this organization as well. After the series ended, they did kind of get some criticism, and they had alternate ending films in 1997, I believe, called End of Evangelion. And then they did do a reboot series of films also in the 2000s. And the last one, most recently, came out in 2021.
Okay. Sounds pretty interesting. I mean, it's pretty realistic, too, everything I heard. I mean, stuff happens every day. Mucci, what do you say about yours?
Well, I got the hot new anime of the season.
My God.
Kaiju number 8. It's based on the manga by Naoya Matsumoto, which began in 2020. And it's done by Production IG, which actually worked on the Evangelion movies. So a bit of a connection there. But in this one, there are kaiju terrorizing mostly Japan, at least so far in the series. And contrary to the typical shonen protagonists who are like usually 14, like Shinji is in Evangelion, this guy's 32, and which is kind of unconventional for a protagonist of these kind of series. And he's kind of past his prime. He wants to be on the front lines.
Don't say that. Don't say 32 is past your prime.
He thinks yeah. But he wants to be on the front line. I mean, he's younger than me. He wants to be
his own prime.
Exactly, yeah. He wants to be on the front lines fighting these kaiju with the defense force, but he's actually on cleanup duty after the defense force comes in and destroys them, and there's like blood and guts everywhere. And so I knew the premise going in that he eventually does get the ability to turn into a kaiju himself and fight the kaiju that are terrorizing Japan. But
and for those that are not familiar, what's a kaiju?
A giant monster, like Godzilla, basically. Ooh. Yeah. So he, and I guess it's not necessarily giant monster because his form is not giant. His form is still his human size. Anyway. I knew that premise going in. In the first episode, he gets put on intestine duty, and it's as gross as it sounds. You like see shit flying everywhere as he's sawing through intestines. So I'm like, does he get like pink eye that turns him into a kaiju? But no, that's not what happens. Kaiju kind of crawls into his mouth, actually, a little one, and he at first is just, it's like
somehow
Hulk.
more disgusting.
Yeah. It's kind of like Hulk with Spider-Man, because he's like immediately, well, as soon as he emerges, he's immediately recognized as a threat, so the government's after him, and then he has to learn how to tamp down, and hide it a bit, like the Hulk does, and he needs to learn how to control his powers. So anyway, he does eventually get to be on the front lines and get to kind of prove himself now at age 32, past his prime age.
Past his prime. So you mentioned that it's like as of now, so it's still ongoing.
Yes,
right?
it's actually it's just started, and maybe by the time this airs, the first season will probably just be wrapping up. So yeah.
Okay, is yours ongoing, or has it been done for a decade at least?
Well, the original series has been done for more than almost 3 decades, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Late to the game because I have not checked it out yet. Don't give me any spoilers.
There will be lots of spoilers.
Yeah, we might. Spoiler warning at top for probably both a little bit. At least.
So let's get to the questions.
Sounds good.
Now, typically, this would get an objection, like in the real world. This would be a compound question. But my first question for you guys is, what are the influences of your series from literature, art, philosophy, what have you? And how does your series integrate those influences successfully, not successfully? How do they do it, if they do it?
Yeah, well, mine has influences from... obviously some like Japanese culture, so Ultraman and some other things like that. And also Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim, which actually is kind of like Evangelion because these people get in these giant mech costumes and fight these creatures. But really what I want to point out...
It's like an intense cosplay for them.
Yeah. Even more intense than some of the things we saw at C2E2, I think. But yeah, one of the main... connections outside of that is that the main character is actually named Kafka Hibino. So that is a reference to Franz Kafka, who wrote the story The Metamorphosis. And that story is about the main character who he's like a workaholic, but he like is trying everything he does goes to his family. He's doing it all for them, and then one day he wakes up and he's a giant bug, basically, and actually kind of like probably mostly like a cockroach sort of thing. So he's like a giant cockroach, and he like can't really communicate all that well, and obviously everyone's like freaked out by him. So it's kind of a commentary on like being ostracized from society. Like his employer comes right away because he's like, why aren't you at work? It's 7 a.m. or whatever.
I'm a fucking cockroach.
He's like, yeah. And then immediately sees it. Like when he sees him, he like runs away and stuff. And his family initially kind of try to help him, but even they eventually are like, oh, he's like a burden and like he's difficult and
can't step on him, otherwise the eggs will go everywhere. Yeah,
it's pretty gross. So like this character being named Kafka is an obvious reference to that, and he is feared and ostracized for something outside of his control as well when he is against his will turned into a kaiju, and like he has to kind of prove himself to society. But I would say in this story there's a bit more of an uplifting message to it because he is, spoiler alert, eventually able to get some people onto his side, some people in the government and stuff, so the people that I might initially think he's like just a monster and be after him and kill him. So
is that not something that happens often with them messing around with intestines and stuff, that it never happens where some bug goes in you?
Well, it wasn't during the intestines part that it happened. That was just a joke I had. It was like he was lying in a hospital bed, and I don't know at this point yet in the series why it happened that it came, but like there was like a flying kind of little kaiju that came and just crawled into his mouth.
It's a lawsuit for the hospital.
yeah, you should sue the hospital.
Filthy is that place that they...
Although maybe he like likes his life better now because he gets to actually fight them.
He was not. That was not some good care that they had there.
No, yeah, I don't know.
It's got to be sanitary.
So yeah, that's probably my main couple connections there.
Okay. Okay.
Influences.
Now, is there anything that's got to do with bugs in your with your series?
Not that I can remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
unless you consider religion a bug. Which brings me into my first point, that anyone who watches Neon Genesis Evangelion, you'll really, if you grew up in the West and you're familiar with Christianity, you will see obvious Christian imagery.
Just the name. I mean,
right, true. I mean, I believe it's Greek for like new origin.
Evangelion.
Sure, let's go with that.
Made up word after that.
There is actually Evangelion is a Greek word. I just can't remember off the top of my head.
I did not know that.
But yeah, but you know, it does
They
sound
can
religious.
Google it.
Right. Yeah. Sorry.
Google is free.
Forgot my Greek for this episode.
Efaristo.
Right. Poli.
Okay, go ahead.
So, but actually, so the assistant director, Kazuya Tsurumaki, said that they only originally used Christian symbolism and themes to give the project a unique edge. So his direct quote was, "There are a lot of giant robot shows in Japan, and we did want our story to have a religious theme to help distinguish us. Because Christianity is an uncommon religion in Japan, we thought it would be mysterious. None of the staff who worked on Eva are Christians. There are
Little did they know who their audience would be.
and they continue to say there's no actual Christian meaning to the show. We just thought the visual symbols in Christianity look cool." And then he did
Those look
say,
kinda cool in the show.
if we had known the show would get distributed in the US and Europe, we might have rethought that choice. So,
In these Christian nations.
They would pick like Scientology or something. It's fucking Tom Cruise.
That would probably fit with like an alien invasion theme.
true.
Tom Cruise
Going
is like a big symbol with that.
Going into space and everything. But I just want to talk about 2 episodes. So the first one, episode 4. And if you watch the show, you'll see, if you're watching it with subs or dubs, I guess, in English.
You sub guy or you dub guy?
Usually subs.
Okay.
Yeah.
You like your subs?
Subs.
Yeah.
That's gonna come up too in my quick
Okay.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to you.
I wouldn't say I'm a sub guy, but subs guy. Yeah. When you see them, the title cards will have the Japanese title and an English title on the actual animated screen. But then, like on Netflix is where I watched it. It'll also have the English like title, which is not translation from the Japanese title. So episode 4, the Japanese title is called "Rain After Running Away," but the English title is "The Hedgehog's Dilemma." And so Hedgehog Dilemma, just a quote from that episode from a character named Ritsuko. She says,
Well, he's really into these like hedgehogs with his like Sonic.
Yeah.
With his choice of Knuckles. it
All
was.
connecting.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all. So her quote is, "Hedgehogs have a hard time sharing warmth with other hedgehogs. The closer they get, the more they hurt each other with their quills. People are also like that." And so this is a direct reference to a parable about the challenges of human intimacy that was written by a German philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer, from his 1851 collection of short philosophical essays. And he basically describes a situation in which a group of porcupines, not hedgehogs, but they're kind of interchangeable.
Bigger quills.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So same
Harder
thing.
to get closer, actually.
Yeah, they're also trying to share heat during the cold winter, but they have to remain apart because they have to avoid hurting each other with their spines. And really, taking this into the context of humans, it shows like the challenge of intimacy, how we have to reconcile yearning for closeness, but also the painful pressures of actually being close with somebody. And despite any goodwill that humans might have, we can't be intimate without the risk of mutual harm, which leads to cautious and tentative relationships.
You just got to be careful not to poke them with your quill.
Yeah, and so this dilemma that humans often face can often lead to isolation, which you will see kind of a lot in the show as well. Like some characters do self-isolate. And then another episode. How
does that play out with it being interesting to see someone like we have a friend that might self-isolate often. That doesn't seem entertaining to me. So how does that, if they're self-isolating, is that good TV still?
I would say, humans, and I'm not a philosopher or a philosophical expert or anything, but I do think that humans might choose to self-isolate to prevent themselves from harming other people. And so if you frame it in that way, like maybe this person who does self-isolate might be doing that.
You know him too.
And when you're in a giant mech, you look at all the harm you can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Even more than
yeah. And when half of the population of the world is destroyed, there's fewer people to get close to, or you never know what's going to happen. So you might not want to like continue developing these relationships and getting closer to people as well.
I gotcha. So it's a safety thing for themselves.
Right. And for others. But, that's the dilemma, I guess.
Yeah.
The other one is episode 16, which the English title is Splitting of the Breast. But the Japanese title...
There you go, Mucci.
The Japanese title translates into The Sickness Unto Death and ... And so this is a reference to a book that's called The Sickness Unto Death, which was written by a Danish philosopher in 1849. His name was Soren Kierkegaard, and he's widely considered to be the first existentialist philosopher. And so for those who aren't familiar, existentialism is kind of the philosophical inquiry that explores the issue of human existence. Basically, throughout this book, I mean, he was also Christian, so, I guess indirectly Christianity did influence the show. But his ultimate, I guess, explanation of sickness unto death is that the sickness unto death is not a physical death, but it's despair. And that's kind of a spiritual death, which stems from not embracing oneself. And so in his book, he describes 3 different kinds of despair. One of them relates to being unconscious of having a self. The second is not wanting to be oneself. And the third is feeling that one is not oneself. And so the characters in Evangelion, like, kind of depict, I think, all 3 of these kinds of despairs because they all have their own issues with their parents or with themselves. And I think that, according to Kierkegaard, to not be in despair is to have reconciled the finite with the infinite, and to exist in awareness of one's own self and love's power. And so I think when I was reading this, and this is not stuff I knew really before researching for this episode, but it kind of made me rethink of my watching of Evangelion and how I should maybe be more forgiving to some of the characters that I did not really enjoy.
That are annoying.
Yeah, it's good to hear this before watching it, because I haven't really gotten into either. Spoiler on that. I'm sure everybody would be surprised by that.
Do you know why it has an "and" at the end of that title?
I'm not really sure.
That's kind of interesting.
Say "soshite." I don't know. And then I just did want to add too that not only was Evangelion influenced by philosophy, but it also influenced new philosophy as well. Sort of. So there was a book that came out in 2022 called Neon Genesis Evangelion and Philosophy. Subtitle is That Sinking Feeling, and sinking not like sinking ship, but sinking like the human teenagers in the show have to sync with their Evas. So it's like that sinking. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So I haven't read that book, but there's a lot of philosophical thought around the show.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Pretty deep shows here. I was not expecting this. I was expecting whatever you were going to throw at me, and some cool stuff that we was going to throw at me.
Yeah, some deep in philosophy, others deep in shit.
Yeah, I was not expecting. I was not expecting this episode to be a philosophical one. We have those from time to time, and they're typically titled it. But it's good to know. Okay. All right. Second question. Tell me what goes into creating this series, this world, where there's these big monsters that become monsters because something goes inside of them or whatever, and this Christian world where there's like the third coming or second coming or whatever.
Yeah.
So tell me.
Third
Impacts. Yeah.
Third, okay.
Yeah. And this one actually go in the monsters, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
So the monsters go in you, and then you go in the monster.
Okay. That's how we should frame the episode. What goes into making this? Tell me about production, techniques, and innovations that are maybe seen through these series, and kind of describe that a little bit.
So, yeah, I wanted to maybe touch yes, it's, richly animated. It's well done in all these regards of music and voice acting and everything. But what I wanted to point out in this show is more of its release innovations. So it is the first ever anime to stream live all over the world at the same time. and it streams live on Crunchyroll. It also streams live on X, or formerly Twitter, which I don't want to call attention to Elon Musk's shitty website, but it streams on Twitter.
Just adding more shit to it, I guess.
Yeah, literally in the first episode.
Live.
So, but what I mean by that, is that if when it airs in
They're
Japan,
drawing it as it's going.
Like all TV now, or so much of TV now is you stream it, right? And you watch it whenever you want, but you can choose to watch it as it's airing in Japan. It airs in Japan, I believe, at 11 p.m. and you can watch it here at 9 a.m. on whatever day that is. Yeah. So that's definitely a first for anime, and I can see that being influential going forward. And not only that, also we're getting into subs versus dubs here now. Usually, if you are a fan of the dub, like the English dub of whatever, you have to wait sometimes a few weeks after the Japanese episode airs. Sometimes with One Piece, you have to wait months for the dubbed versions to come out. So you're always going to be a bit behind the Japanese version. Something huge can happen in the episode, and unless you want to switch to subs, you're kind of, at a loss.
Or learn the language.
But if you prefer hearing it in English or whatever language you're watching it in, you usually have to wait. These ones release right away, right after the Japanese episode finishes airing. The dubs are out, and it's dubbed into 10 different languages, including English, including Latin American Spanish, Castilian Spanish, French, Italian.
You say right away? So is it if it airs live in Japan, you're able to access it in the U.S. In the U.S., are you able to get the dub right away? Or there's still a little bit of a waiting period?
You would, if you're watching it live when it airs in Japan, my understanding is that you'd watch it, the 23-minute episode or whatever, and then right after that's done airing, the dub is going to drop. So if you want to watch it,
you just wait a little bit.
Yeah, your wait time is only half an hour now or whatever, as opposed to weeks or months or whatever. So I think this all just speaks to, and I think this is going to happen a lot more going forward in anime. I think it speaks to where anime is now. This it's getting more popular all over the world, and more people want to get in on it. And dubs are coming out generally faster than they used to, but now this is pretty instantaneous. So I think this is going to be something that's huge going forward as anime gets more and more popular all over the world.
Yeah, speaks to capitalism, consumerism. Everybody wants everything now.
Some of the good aspects of capitalism, though.
So I mean, that sounds like a good thing. Other things, maybe not so much.
Yeah, right.
Is there? I know you said you're a sub guy.
I'm a subs guy, and I did watch
or hoagies,
Jimmy John's, or Subway.
I was thinking of a different sub, but
wait, like a submarine?
We don't have to talk about it in this episode. But I grew up eating Subway, and I don't really care for Jimmy John's.
Okay.
I will say Jersey Mike's is good.
Yeah, Jersey Mike's is good.
Potbelly's is good. Mr. Submarine, giant sandwiches, taste is all right.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can get to that in a different episode. Let's make subs.
So Evangelion was produced by Gainax and was animated by Tatsunoko. And the original series in 95-96, as well as the first set of movies, End of Evangelion, were all hand-drawn on what are called cells, which is short for celluloid. And it's a transparent sheet that was where objects are drawn or painted on for traditional hand-drawn animation. And then in the rebuild series of films, it switched over to digital animation. And I'm bringing this up because if you do any research into it, or actually even just by watching it, you will kind of see that there were clearly some budgetary confinements or towards the end. Constraints, yes.
With a lot of shows, you see that. Or you see where something maybe switches over.
Yeah.
It's pretty noticeable in this one.
You'll go minutes where the frame is just still, and you know.
I think I actually have heard of this
Okay.
because it's a big thing that I think I've heard of this.
Yeah.
Actually.
So
That's kinda funny.
I guess that comes with hand-drawn animation and requiring larger budgets. Especially for the 90s, I think it was kind of. I wouldn't say groundbreaking, but from what I've read,
Did they try to say that it was like for artistic effect?
I
Or does it just stay on there? Nothing's fucking happening. There's nothing dramatic happening.
Open to interpretation, I think.
Yeah, I think especially the dramatic aspect of it, there are some scenes that, maybe leaving a still with some captivating imagery might be a choice.
Because I know different shows do that. Just intentional.
That's a choice already.
Yeah.
And then actually, Mucci and I saw the end of Evangelion in the movie theaters back in March. And that was actually the first time that those movies were brought to theaters in North America in 2024.
So this is the Music Box.
Yeah, we saw it at the Music Box theaters. They were airing it at select theaters around the
The Music Box in Chicago typically shows like kind of older movies, right?
Yeah, or artsy ones. Yeah, right. Which I guess this would qualify
as an artsy movie.
Longest post-credit sequence in any movie, I would say. There's like 45 minutes.
There's also an element of like live action in the end of Evangelion 2, where it's not just the hand-drawn animation. They kind of,
you just switch it up at the end.
It's a choice. But yeah, I thought those are just some interesting, points to bring up about the animation style and techniques that they used, and how they're different. And I personally haven't seen the Rebuild series, but I have heard the animation is like much crisper, and like the Evas have a lot more depth to them, and like it's just a lot more interesting to watch. Probably because they weren't under the same budgetary constraints as they were in the 90s. But so once I do watch those, I probably will appreciate it.
And when did those start coming out, or when?
I think the first one was maybe like 2008 or something.
Okay,
I think so. And no, it ended in 2021, as council said.
Okay,
but yeah.
Now the 96, 97, I guess, version, or when it first started coming out.
Yeah.
Do you think there'd be a resurgence of that since we have X-Men 97? That got
just continue it.
It's continued on from that jumping point, and like nothing ever changed. Like 30 years didn't go by.
I think there have been many ways that the author of Evangelion has tried to get people to basically stop watching and go like, this is over now.
Right. So the point of like the end of Evangelion films were like a retelling of the last few episodes of the original series, and then the Rebuild series of films is like a retelling of the whole thing with some different plot points, more focus on certain characters and less so on other characters, to my understanding.
Brand new ones too.
So
which is weird.
It's kind of maybe like only watch the Rebuild and not. I don't know.
Is what he wanted.
That's what he wanted to say.
He wanted us to stop talking about it, but here we are making this episode. We're not going to shut up about it. All right, so we've heard quite a bit so far. Seems like a good time to take a recess. Just a brief one to do a little game that we're going to come up with here called Interrogatories. All right? Now, in the legal world, what this is a list of questions written down by one side to the other. The other side will answer under oath those questions, and that way both side of councils can review the questions, and then they know what they're dealing with. Here in OTR debate, each debater will write down 3 questions for the other side in a type of trivia type setting. So, you guys have your questions?
Yeah.
All right, let's hear them. Or let's see them, I guess. Yep, these are questions. All right. We'll start with Mucci's question to we. How about that?
Sure.
All right. Question. The Japanese voice actress for... You're going to have to help me with this one.
I think it's Rei.
Rei.
And her name is Megumi Hashibara.
Okay. Later voiced the main female character with a similar sounding name of what other classic 90s anime 3 years later?
I believe that would be Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, Mucci, he's got it right. Okay. And from we to Mucci, what 80s movie is the design of your show inspired by?
That would be Tron, because he's all blue and glowing and stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
It's Tron.
So 1-1. All right. Let's go with the creator of Evangelion.
Hideaki Anno.
That's it. Directed a film in what series involving a giant monster, or giant monsters, sorry. And we've mentioned this before, so that's a hint.
Is it Godzilla?
It is Godzilla.
Godzilla. All right. 2 for 1 for Mucci. We haven't gotten to a second question yet. Mucci, what is the name of the manga author's previous manga that... I'm sorry. What is the name of the manga author's previous manga that involved a human girl turning into a god?
I have no idea. I thought this was his first manga.
Okay. Louis, do you want to tell us the answer?
It's Neko Wappa.
Ooh.
Is that cat something?
Wappa.
Neko Wappa.
The cat whopper.
And our last question for a famous Japanese singer wrote and performed the songs for each of the rebuild of Evangelion films. Incidentally, they were Mucci's most listened to artist on Spotify last year. Oh. So this is a memory thing. Mucci remembers every single fucking thing that any of his friends do.
It was on my Spotify Wrapped.
Including hairstyle. We don't fucking know your Spotify Wrapped. What is the name of that artist?
Is it a solo artist?
Yes, but what is their name?
Ooh.
Okay. Well, I know Mucci loves Baby Metal, but that is not a solo artist. And due to Mucci's clue, I will say Utada Hikaru.
That's correct.
Correct.
Oh, I already lost.
All right, let's go with the third question for you anyways.
Yeah, let's see what...
What are the 2 different main classifications of kaiju in the series?
One is, I think Honshu are the big ones.
Like big one size?
Yeah, and then there's like little ones too. Yoju, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's correct. Okay, so you said it. We's got this.
But We's won.
It's got no impact on my ruling at the end of the show. But congrats for our first mini game, Interrogatories. But before we get to our last question, our legal question, I want to just ask the listeners, viewers, to do us a quick favor. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, wherever. We'd really appreciate it. And we love you. Right, Mucci?
Yes.
Well, don't get too close, you know. It is the porcupine's dilemma.
Now let's get back to it. All right. As always, we've got our legal question as our third question. Who is your favorite character? Tell me who and why. And Mucci, because I know that you're thinking, that's not a legal question, you dumb.
You're right. I was thinking that.
What type of lawyer would your favorite character be if they went to law school, passed the bar, and started practicing?
Okay.
You want to go first?
Yeah. So far, my favorite character is Kikuru Shinomiya. And she's actually voiced by the same voice actress as Power from Chainsaw Man.
Obsessed much? That is your favorite character, right?
It's my favorite character, but let's settle down. She's 16.
Okay.
Although, Drake might be into that. Who knows?
Moving on.
Anyway, she is the character type known as tsundere. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But what that is a character, typically female and typically in anime, that is initially really harsh and cold and mean and or mean, but gradually reveals a softer and friendlier side. And sometimes it's a love interest, but again, not here because she's only 16. I hope not.
The character and the voice actress are 16?
No. Just the character. Okay.
It's like I'm kind of confused. All right.
But one of the classic examples of this archetype actually is Asuka from Evangelion. But here, unlike Asuka, it only takes like an episode for this character to go from pretty harsh to like show her her softer side and show her like reason for being and a reason that she's like so kind of competitive, because like Asuka, she's like kind of like thinks she's the best at everything, and she really is kind of the best. Like, she's like the number one cadet. She has like the highest sync rate with her costume, which is also similar to Eva, where there's like sync rates with their their mix.
This seems kind of interesting.
Derivative.
But
as Ango Gabogian would say.
but it's revealed that her father is actually the leader of the defense force, and her mother has died. She was like a soldier that was fighting kaiju, or like whatever. Someone from the defense force was fighting kaiju before the show started, and so she like is trying to be the best to like. In honor of her mother in some ways, but also her father is like constantly pushing her to be the best. Like, she graduates top of her class, and her father's like, all right, well, you can't dwell on your accomplishments. You'll just lead to failure if you do that. So move on, you know. So he's kind of harsh and cold to her, and so she's tough. She's like kind of harsh to the main character, but after he saves her, she becomes more friendly to him, and she knows his secret as well pretty early on. So she is like indebted to him, and also is helping him like not get revealed as the Kaiju number 8. So I think the type of lawyer she would be is at a big law firm. She would be like the boss's child, and would be like, aside from nepotism, the boss would be like, no, like I'm gonna treat you like everyone else, and actually even harsher than everyone else. You really have to prove yourself. But she is really good, and she does take on the most clients and has the most billable hours. But like,
she sounds like quickly. She would. Yeah, she sounds like she would be a gunner in law school. Like
yeah, exactly.
Gunner being like someone question being asked, fucking hand straight up. I'm going to answer the question.
Yeah, she would definitely be.
Okay. 100%. All right. Well,
she might burn out quickly though.
Yeah. Who knows?
Okay.
So I would say in the whole series, my favorite character is probably Katsuragi Misato, and she is one of the main adult characters. Just wanted to qualify that. And she's the operations director at NERV, which is the paramilitary organization that I mentioned earlier. And she's the one who commands the Evangelion pilots, who are all the teenagers.
Okay.
So she's really hardworking, and she's been with the company for a really long time, or the agency, I guess. But we learn in episode 12, like, why she joined, and that was because she wanted to avenge her father, who was killed during the second impact. And so she really got a lot of trauma.
Mine's sounding a little too similar.
That's why we're comparing.
So she endured a lot of trauma during the second impact, like with abandonment, and she really has like these long-lasting mental health issues that really show up later in the series. And her professionalism at work kind of is in big contrast of her like at-home self, because she's like super messy and borderline alcoholic. She's always drinking beer, is not a good cook, and at home she's actually the caretaker to a couple of the teenagers who are the pilots. And so like I mentioned, she's like very messy at home, kind of like not really thoughtful in terms of like comparing to her competence at work, I would say. But she's also like risked her lives, a lot of her own life, a lot of the time during the show to like save other people, and she gives some really good advice and guidance to the teenagers. And so that being said, I think the type of lawyer she would be, the first thing that came to mind was guardian ad litem. And so for those who are not familiar, GALs, or guardian ad litems, are attorneys who are appointed to represent the best interest of the child in cases that are like child custody or child support or divorce cases.
So like an in-between between the parents, right?
Yes.
They're the ones that are specifically where the parents have, their own lawyers. The mom's got her lawyer, dad's got his lawyer in that type of situation. The guardian ad litem is basically a child's lawyer, right?
Yeah. Yes, a child's lawyer, not a child lawyer. She is an adult. And I think she can really relate to her clients in that sense, because she's gone through a lot of trauma, but she's able to stay professional in the workplace and like investigate certain situations, like kind of because she's a caretaker of two teenagers, I think she really understands like what's in the best interest of them. That's shown a lot, I think, throughout the series, but there's one scene where she kind of advises Shinji, who's the main pilot, one of the main pilots, you make your own choice of like if you want to continue piloting this or not, because he's clearly at conflict too, and in despair. But yeah, so that's my main character, or my favorite character.
Okay. All right, I've heard enough. Let's get to closings. Mucci, keep it brief. I know you want to talk, but let's start. Brief closing argument, and I'll make my decision afterwards. You want to start?
Sure. So Neon Genesis Evangelion is widely considered to be one of the greatest anime of all time. But that being said...
Death Note.
One of.
It was also subject to a lot of controversy, and particularly, with its final episodes kind of being confusing, maybe too abstract to a lot of viewers and critics as well. But that being said, a lot of people feel, and I personally now, after doing research on this episode and reading a lot more, I feel that the plot really isn't that important to the show. So whether it's confusing or not doesn't matter, because it's all about the characters. And
saved.
And the characters, as I mentioned, the philosophical issues that arise in the show really demonstrate what the characters interact with each other and like themselves. And I think that's what really makes this show really strong, is the character development.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mucci?
Well, I think Kaiju number 8 has Evangelion beat by having a story that is immediately engaging rather than taking half the series to get to the good stuff. It is also richly, smoothly animated rather than having still screens for minutes at a time and characters just standing in an elevator. And then unfinished crude drawings in the last couple episodes. So I just think the tropes and innovations, I should say, of Evangelion have been refined about 30 years later here, with better pacing, better plotting, and actually some comedy and a light, fun tone that won't leave you depressed and confused like Evangelion does.
Okay. Question for you, Mucci. Mm-hmm. Number 8.
Oh, I never got to that, did
1
I?
through 7.
So the strongest kaiju that emerge are like numbered like that. So he's actually a very, very strong kaiju. He's a Dai kaiju. And there's a kaiju number 9 that he fights that is also, I don't know if this is true of the other 1 through 7. I don't know much about 1 through 7, but he can turn human, and he's like the size of a human as well.
Number 9?
Number 9 is, yeah.
Gotcha. So it's strength
can be, yeah. But strength wise, like the main character is a Dai kaiju, which is like he's like a super strong one. That's why he's able to he's basically he's like One Punch Man. He defeats these guys in one punch. Another
all that shit.
All right, I think I'm ready to make my ruling here. Mucci, you gave me the explanation that I've been waiting for this entire episode. Had to pull it out of you, but you gave it to me. And for that reason, I'm going to go with we. Because I think that we don't get to Kaiju number 8 without Evangelion.
And you know what, Judge? That is the correct answer to this debate. Yeah. I'm going to pull my mask off and say that I much prefer Evangelion, although Kaiju number 8 is pretty good.
Yeah, I think... but you guys both did a good job of, for me, someone that doesn't watch anime, that doesn't read the manga, these both sound very interesting. And I know I've said this before in other episodes with Texas Chainsaw Man. but you guys did a good job of explaining it to me, and they do sound very interesting. And yeah, I'm going to give the win to we. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Arigato.
And so with that being said, this has been OTR Debate. Thanks.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.